2, ready.
We're two not cops, we're just two guys. We used to be cops, now we're just guys. Two not cops.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of The Murder Project. Yes, we made it to the big 3-0. So for those of you that have been following along, we will be doing another installment of Two Not Cops. This will be the part 3 episode for Two Not Cops. And in this episode, we're going to be kind of talking through some of the procedures that go into law enforcement and how things kind of work from our side, as in law enforcement side, going back to the public. Questions that people might have, whether you are a witness to something, whether you are a victim to something, or whether any questions that you might kind of have as far as the procedures go. I also want to bring up, before we start the episode, don't forget, everybody, if you are listening on any Apple products, or if you have an iPhone, which most of the people that are listening to the show do, please remember, even if you're not listening on Apple Podcast, make sure and stop by and give us a review. Hit that 5 stars and hit the subscribe button so that we can get past the algorithms and it'll make our show more available to people. It'll come up more in the search options and things like that. So having said that, episode 30, Two Not Cops, starts right now. My main man, Mike Smith, back at it.
What up? Yeah, we are.
How's it going, man? You doing
good.
all right?
Yeah, I'm feeling all right.
You feeling good? You know, last time we did an episode, you were talking about that you had a little case of the sniffles.
I did.
Mr. Sniffles was coming in.
He did,
and
yeah.
And then it got you, huh?
The weird thing is, I was sick, and right when I thought I was getting over it, I feel like I got sick all over again. I mean, it was just like that. One day I was fine, and the very next day I felt even worse, and it just lasted for another week.
Yeah, so we were getting ready to do, after the last episode we did, we were getting ready to do the Two Not Cops episode so we could drop it, and then we had to do a little postpone. You know, people get sick. There's seasonal things going on right now.
That's exactly. I believe that is. I think it was just a really bad cold. Maybe, you know, like just the funk. That's what I always call it. And a lot of my job is outside, and it got cold.
It did.
And it get cold, and then it get warm again. And then I'm indoors, outdoors, in the cooler, out of the cooler. And so I think it was just a big combination of all that. Just over and over, seasonal changes, lots of temperature changes. And my body was like, you're not getting any younger.
Yeah, going to shut down mode.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and make you miserable for the next week and give you just crushing sinus congestion and all sorts of colors coming out with a good, you know, morning hack.
Yeah. So in light of everything that's kind of going on right now, we decided to postpone the recording of the episode to give Mike some time to recover. And he feels like he is good to go. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Either that or you're just going to get us both sick.
Well, I really hope that doesn't happen.
Now we got enough distance between us. We're good.
Yeah. But I am excited to talk about some of this stuff because, you know, even though I've been out of law enforcement for a while, I still get people that know me that they'll just have a random question and be like, hey, I have a question about like cop stuff, or I have a cop question.
Yeah.
I'll receive it in text format. And I'll be like,
yeah,
okay.
got a cop question for you.
Yeah, exactly. They want to know, you know, procedure, or, you know, a lot of times it's something like, hey, I saw this video about this, or I heard this. What do you think about that? I mean, what does your training and expertise tell you? And I'm like, well, make sure you ask a reasonable question.
Yeah, or I saw this cop flying down the street. He didn't have his lights on. Or yeah. I saw these two cops and they were sitting in a parking lot talking to each other. What are they doing?
Yeah, I saw a cop at McDonald's and he was eating a hamburger. Am I paying him for that?
Yeah, to get it. Yeah, man, everybody gets a lunch break.
Yeah, and they're just like, I mean,
that's actually a law too.
Isn't there crimes he should be stopping? Shouldn't he be walking the beat, chasing down all the criminals?
Yeah. So as we continue in our series of the Two Not Cops episodes, we kind of want to change it up and do some different ones as we go along. You know, we've already talked about how each of us got into law enforcement, and we've also spoke about kind of how that all worked out in the FTO, the field training process, all the way out to us getting in patrol and actively kind of patrolling the areas that we were assigned to.
Mm-hmm.
So in this one, we're going to try to cover some more of the kind of questions I think that some people have. And if you have any questions, feel free to message us, the Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Then we have our email, contact@themurderproject.com, and that no one's ever sent an email to before. But,
yeah, anytime, please.
Yeah, we still got a goose egg on that one.
What we really want to know is just if it even works.
Yeah.
Just send us a test email.
Yeah. And we have some other shows lined up as far as like, I know people are like, oh man, what are the funniest drunk stories you have?
Oh,
or
yeah.
what are the, we plan on doing those as we go along, but as we're doing this, we want to kind of really lay the groundwork that gets us into kind of everything that moves forward.
Yeah. Plus, and I mean, in the world of true crime, you hear it all the time on other podcasts, in articles written where people are asking questions. They want to know, why didn't a cop do this, or why didn't the cop or detective do that? And really, we just want to help, because the answer is probably something really simple. And believe it or not, most of these questions I hear when I'm listening to all my true crime podcasts is more than likely it's just a lack of information.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, cops become mind readers.
Yeah. And they're people.
Yeah. And they're not clairvoyant either. And there's also a certain amount of protocol. Like, what you are able to do as a police officer is directly relative to the amount of information you have about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a lot going on, there's not a lot you can do. For example, the classic is, somebody calls to report a crime and has no information on it.
Yeah.
And then you can imagine almost nothing happens. Now, you could insert any crime here. I saw kids egging a house. I saw someone break into my car.
I think this guy's driving and he's drunk.
Yeah, I think there's a drunk driver.
But I'm not following him. I don't have a vehicle description.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give you my callback number.
Yeah, stuff like that. And like I said, insert any crime there, and then they're shocked to find out that nothing happens, because that's not a lot of information.
Yeah, and I've talked about previously that you have different types of callers and witnesses, all the way from the person that wants to stay completely out of the case all the way up to the person that gives you like their life story and they know that their next door neighbor's a drug dealer or something like that.
Right.
And you get anything in between.
I feel like what they want when anybody calls anonymously is just like the classic like 90s action movie SWAT team van response,
mm-hmm.
where a blacked out like box truck shows up with just SWAT on the side, and then the doors bust out and there's always like move, move, move.
Yeah, it's like an old UPS truck that got converted into a SWAT van.
And they just storm up to and they just stack up on the house and they're just like, go! And they breach and you hear a bunch of flashbangs and they drag a guy out in his pajamas and handcuffs and they're like, got him.
Yeah.
And the neighbor's like, ha!
They're like,
play loud music again. I want to see my tax dollars work, son. I want to see rotary grenade launchers. I want to see assault rifles. I want to look over on my neighbor's roof and I want to see a sniper.
Yeah.
But we don't, if you call anonymously, that's still your choice, but it's directly relative. The response is directly relative to how much information you give us. So if you give us barely any information and we can't contact you for more, nothing's going to happen, because I'm sure, I know in Texas, but more than likely for every state in the union, in order for there to be a crime, you have to have a victim and a suspect.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to know the suspect by name, but you have to have something. You can't just be like, this happened and a guy looked like this, and I don't have anything else. And then, I mean...
Yeah, let's go. So we're not speaking in such kind of vague terms. Let's go situational. So I'll give you a situation and then we'll say,
sure.
We'll kind of see how it plays out. So let's say that you are in your house and you see someone breaking into your neighbor's car across the street.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you call 911 or preferably a non-emergency line if you know the number, which I've said it before, know your local law enforcement's non-emergency lines, because that is technically not an emergency, and it's going to be handled by the same people essentially that answer the 911 calls.
That's right. They're sitting in the same room. It's just they're not on like the emergency number. They're not sitting on the emergency like my husband's having a heart attack number.
Right. So you look outside your house, you're witnessing someone break into your neighbor's vehicle, and you call the police, and so they're going to ask you specific questions. They're going to ask you, number one, who you are, where's this offense currently taking place at. So you're going to have to give your address, give them a good callback number, so that if something happens, they can call you back. Be as descriptive as you can. If you can see what kind of clothes they're wearing, if they're going to ask you, is it a male or female? Mm-hmm. Are they white, black, or Hispanic? That's right. That's normally the white, black, Hispanic. Can you see what color shirt? Are they wearing a jacket? Do they have pants on? Can you see their shoe? Of course they have pants. What color pants? What, is it shorts? Do they have a hoodie on? Can you tell anything? I mean, if you can give someone's hairstyle, anything literally that you can think of to give to that person, and from a safe distance, see if they leave that area and which way they're going.
Well, I think we got a little too far ahead. So, with that scenario specifically, and you're the caller, and you're like, "Hey, someone is breaking into my neighbor's car." First of all, they're gonna probably ask you some questions like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
And where is this happening? So you're probably gonna need to know your neighbor's address.
Yeah.
Or if it's your address and you don't know your neighbor's address and you give them your address, you're gonna need to give them like a cardinal direction of where that is from your house.
Yeah.
It's across the street to the left of my house or to the right. You're going to have to give them some information. Okay. What car are they breaking into?
Yeah.
You're going to want to, if you don't know the make and model, describe it, pickup, sedan, SUV, something like that. And then try to describe the perpetrator as much as you can, like we discussed earlier. And without the answers to those questions, you're more than likely just going to get a roll by.
Maybe.
I mean, maybe. The cop might swing by and look and turn on his spotlights. Maybe he'll pull up down the block and he'll walk up and try to look. But with very little information, you're just not going to get that much of a response, because there's no way for anybody to know anything but what you're telling them.
Yeah.
And that dictates the response. It's just the way it is. I mean, what would you want to go into any scenario with as little information as possible or as much information as possible?
Right.
Job interview, going to the supermarket without a list, dangerous work.
Yeah. So let's fast forward and say, okay, the cops are on their way, and before the cops got there, the guy runs off. Mm-hmm. And you know that he ran down the street, but that's all the information that you have. If the cops search the area and they don't find the person, from that point, it's going to be very difficult at all, if at all, to find anybody related to this crime.
Right.
And so I know the first thing people are going to say, well, start dusting for prints.
Oh, Lord.
And get some lift some prints off the vehicle and do things like that. And
now, I was never a crime scene technician. You do get trained how to fingerprint to a certain degree.
Both of us did.
Right, yeah, to a certain degree of success. But what people don't realize is it is not a smooth, easy process. Most textures in your car have like those. It's got texture to it. It's got
it's
like
a raised surface, so it's harder to imprint.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah, it's got little grooves and nooks and crannies and stitching and leather itself. If it, God forbid, it's armoralled.
Yeah.
And so it's just not what people think. Television, movies, people that are really good at it, bragging. It's actually fairly difficult to get a fingerprint. And let's not forget the way to get around all of that. The mother trucker wore gloves.
He just wears gloves.
He just wears gloves.
And not only that, but you have to also take into consideration that in a crime like a property theft situation, most of the fingerprints that are going to be lifted off the car are going to be the owners or people associated with them. Right. And then if if you look at this in the city that you live, go on to your local law enforcement's page. They'll have a crime data sheet of some sort uploaded on there.
Oh, I'm sure plenty.
See how many times something like that happened, and then take into consideration that if they tried to lift prints and process prints on every single vehicle that was broken into in your city, and let's just say Amarillo, they're going to have to hire 15 crime scene techs to go through all this information and run it through. And what we're talking about is it's very, very costly to do these things. So if in the event that someone went through your car and stole something and I may have already said this before, but please don't leave firearms in your vehicles.
No.
Like, golly, that's the best way to get them on the street.
Don't leave anything of value in your vehicle if you park it outside of your dwelling.
Yeah. Not your garage door openers, your firearms, your computer bags, your purses,
your guitar,
all your stuff, anything. Don't leave anything in your car that is of value. And if something of value is stolen, you have to look at the fact of, okay, well, so let's say it's $200 value. Like, I know that, was it last March or something like that? A guy actually unbolted the toolboxes out of the back of my truck and took them.
That's right. Yeah.
And in a situation like that, even when you're talking about the loss on my part was $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
I lost $3,000 in toolboxes and I'm not talking about a handheld toolbox.
Right.
I'm talking about toolboxes that bolt into the back of your truck.
Bolted into your truck.
Pork chop boxes, more specifically, is what they're called. And they're an easy bolt-in system, so they're easy to take out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have to have some time to do that. This is 4:00 in the morning, and guy stole it out of my truck. I had some really crappy video that he was on, and there was no way for us to identify who that was. And me as a civilian with law enforcement experience, it really burned me up because I knew nothing is going to happen and my property is never going to be returned. And most people should take that same mindset and apply it.
You know, it is a really disheartening fact about especially property crimes. Unless somebody catches them like dead to rights, you're more than likely that property is probably gone. You're not going to get it back. Somebody breaks into your car, they steal your purse and, or your computer bag. And unless it turns up in a pawn shop, you're probably not getting that back. Or unless the guy's bebopping down the street and a cop rolls up and catches him.
Yeah. And sometimes that happens. So we're not saying that it's not, and the police will go out and investigate those crimes. But let's just say that the cop does come and catches the person that's breaking into the vehicle. Now you're the witness to that crime.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get into the mindset of, okay, now I'm going to have to be that witness. I called the police. And if you want to remain anonymous, can you technically? Sure, you can. But in establishing that, when the police officers are trying to establish probable cause and get all the way up to the point to where you're going to try to prosecute this person, it's good to have a witness. Now, if the cop rolls up, the dude's just in the car rifling through there, he's got him dead to rights. Okay, I can understand. That's probably going to get pled out anyways. But if you take it up a notch, and let's go into, maybe something a little more serious, it's important to be a good witness. But not only that, but we wanted to talk about, and I know we've mentioned some of this before, but let's just get a baseline. So what all, cop walks up to you, what all is he going to ask you for?
Like, in any scenario, they're going to want to identify you to a T.
Yeah.
They're going to want to know your name, date of birth, your address, where you currently live. A lot of people have multiple addresses, so it'll come down to the question of, where do you get your mail?
You're right.
They're going to want to know your social security number. They're going to want to know your driver's license number.
Where you work.
Right, where you work. They're going to want to know as much about you as possible so that you are thoroughly identified, because you would be surprised, or maybe you won't be, a lot of people lie about that stuff as much as possible. Anything to throw any type of doubt into your identity. And that's not just suspects either. Victims will do that too, because like we've talked about a half dozen times before, they're realizing that they're going to might have to go to court, talk to a lawyer, maybe even go to the trial and and testify. And for some reason, that absolutely terrifies some people.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're going to want to identify you with as much as they can. And that's normally what it is. It's those 7 things they're going to want to know so that they got you and they know who you are and they know how they can reach you. And there's no mistaking you for someone else.
Right. And so that's just kind of one of those baseline deals we wanted to get going before we kind of got into some story time as far as like our past experience goes. And I think one of the things that we wanted to cover in this one is scenarios about, things that normally happen where people feel like the cops may have let something slide, DUIs, family violence, domestic violence situations, runaways, missing persons, things like that. And so I know that there was an incident where I was about to get off work. I'm talking like I'm minutes away from the early shift units coming on. And I get a call out to a domestic violence call, which you're like, well, I mean, you're in. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're 4 or 5 hours in now when you consider everything that's going to happen, plus paperwork, evidence, all that stuff, if it's legit.
Right. Yeah.
And so I get out to this house and I pull up. I got my backup officer with me, and I see a car sitting halfway down a long driveway. This is out in the county. And so, in this particular area, each property owner has 1 acre to 2 acres of land. So I have this long, like, gravel driveway, and there's a car sitting in about midway down, and it's got all the windows broken out of it. I mean, like, smashed out, and it's, it's one of those deals where, like, okay, this is real.
Yeah.
This is legit. There's 2 women standing outside, and there's a male inside the house. And I walk up to the women and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And then they're like, this lady's like, oh, my husband, he went crazy. He smashed all the windows out of the car. We're trying to drive away. He's crazy. I'm like, all right, y'all stay outside. Me and my backup partner are now going to go in and see if we can locate this guy. We're going to go together. We did not feel like the women were threats at the time. So we let them be where they were. We went inside the house. We located the male. We put him in handcuffs. And I know that's one of the people who are like, why you hold up. You're like, oh, come here, buddy. Turn around, put your hands behind your back. And people freak out. Why are you doing that? Why are you putting me in handcuffs?
Am I under arrest?
Because we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And what we're getting, the information that we have so far based off what I've seen at this point tells me that there is a good chance that this guy is, number one, the aggressor. Number 2, he is probably still in a state of anger.
Right.
And I don't want to start anything off by being like, hey, what's up, buddy? Let's talk.
Yeah.
What you got going on? So we put him in handcuffs. We pat him down. We make sure they don't have any weapons on him.
Yep.
Now, in a pat down, you're not going through people's pockets looking for drugs or drug paraphernalia or anything. In a pat down, you're looking for weapons.
Right. Often called a Terry frisk.
Exactly.
Or frisking someone at all. Yeah, you're just making sure they don't have a gun, a knife, a monkey wrench hidden in their pockets, tucked into their waistband, anything like that. Yeah, you just want to make sure ain't nobody going to get hurt.
Yeah, and so as we start talking to this guy, we realize, like, he's extremely calm. He does not have any weapons on him. I asked him if there were any weapons in the house. He said no. He doesn't own a gun. He doesn't have, which is really strange for this area.
Yeah, it is.
Which I also asked the lady before I came to the house, are there any weapons in the house? No, not that I'm aware of. We don't have any guns. We don't have anything like that. So that kind of automatically at least puts you a little more at ease. But after talking to the guy for a minute, we realize he's not actually a threat, and we take him out of handcuffs. And we sit him down at the kitchen table. My partner stays with him. I go back outside, because now what we're going to do is we're going to get the stories.
That's right. Yeah. You're going to get 2 different stories, and the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Exactly.
And that's how it always is.
So I'll try not to draw this out too long. I'll start out with the female side of it. The lady says that one of her friends came into town, and they went out to the bar. And this is a regular day during the week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't remember what it was. Let's just say a Wednesday. And they went out to the bar. Everybody's got work the next day or whatever. They're both hammered. And, you know, she said she came home. And when they got home, they continued to drink. Her husband had to get up and go to work early the next day. And I mean like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And so you can appreciate that.
I sure can.
And he was mad because they were so loud.
Mm-hmm.
They were being very loud and he couldn't sleep. So he came out and he told them to leave. He's like, hey, if y'all are going to continue this, or no, he told them to be quiet. He's like, y'all need to be quiet. And this is before like Uber was big.
Yeah.
And so the lady says, well, we're going to go get a hotel somewhere then. And he's like, y'all can't drive. Y'all shouldn't even have drove from Amarillo back out here.
Right.
Y'all are hammered. You're not driving. And she's like, well, you can't tell us what to do. You know, we can do whatever we want. So these ladies pack their bags. The one lady grabs her bags that she brought with her.
Yeah.
The other lady packs the bag. They go out to the car. They get in it. They start backing up. The guy comes out, grabs a golf club out of the back of his truck. He's got his sticks back there.
Yeah.
And he smashes all the windows out of the car while they're sitting in it, actively trying to back away.
Yeah.
So we do have 2 assaults.
That you do. Yeah.
In this situation, we have 2 assaults. Now I go and after this, I go and I talk to my partner and I say, what do you got? Well, he tells me everything that they told me up until the point of where the assaults happened.
Mm-hmm.
And he says what happened is that when they were packing up their bags and getting ready to leave, he walked out to the car and he had a set of keys to the car, but she had a set of keys to the car too.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, I wasn't thinking about it. I was mad. I didn't want him to drive. So I busted all the windows out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why would you do that? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't want him to drive the car. And so I did. I was like, well, were they inside the car? And he's like, no, nobody's inside the car. They were inside the house.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have contradicting stories.
Yep.
And in domestic violence cases, if you have, there's the use of the word shall.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if in the incident where I felt like something happened, I shall make a report. In the incident I felt like there was an assault, I shall make an arrest.
That's right. Shall make an arrest.
And so I have this situation where now I'm trying to figure out, well, who's telling the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have 2 different stories. In one situation, I have multiple assaults. In another situation, I have a guy who, as weird as this may sound, has the right to break the windows out of his own vehicle if he so chooses.
Yeah, I was waiting for that to come up because it is not against the law to break your own property.
No, he can smash it.
Foolish, sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously.
Churlish.
Yeah, churlish. Insubordinate.
Yeah.
But it's not illegal. If you are angry and you want to kick your front door in because you forgot your keys and someone calls on you, cop might show up. If it's your house, they're going to be like, well, it's going to cost a lot more to fix that door, so sorry about your luck, bud.
Yeah, and goodbye.
Yeah.
And that's it, and it's over.
No crime.
So now we're in a situation where I have to figure out who's telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Because in one scenario, I have multiple crimes. In another scenario, I have no crime.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do sometimes is we split. I have my partner go out and he talks to the 2 females.
Mm-hmm.
I stay in the house and talk to the male. And then I'm going to go through and I know that most people in the situation is like, I had to tell him again. Yes. Start from the beginning and tell me what you did.
That's right.
And then after we did that, my partner and I went outside and we compared. And what we came to the conclusion of is that both sides still told the same story the second time around.
Yeah.
I got the same story from him. He got the same story from them.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I went out and I started looking at the car because I'm going to take photographs.
That's right.
Inside the vehicle were the bags.
Yeah.
The suitcases. And the car was back down the driveway. Now I did notice that the glass from the vehicle was in the carport. So
Uh-huh.
it wasn't a garage, it was just the carport covering.
Yeah.
So there was glass in the carport. There was not glass out where the car was. There was only glass in one specific area, not drawing back. Like as in if he was breaking the windows out while they were in a reverse motion.
Right.
There would be glass in multiple areas as it was going backwards.
You're right. Have to follow the car.
Right. So the glass is in one specific spot. And so now I'm not leaning towards his side, but now I'm starting to think maybe there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I take pictures of the vehicle. I'm looking at them on my camera, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I supposed to know how this whole scenario rolled out?
Right.
And I got lucky because what I did was I have my flashlight out. I'm shining it around the car. I'm looking through there. It's like you look, you check, you double check, you triple check.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you have your partner go out there and do the same.
That's right.
And even in searches, I used to do that where I would take half the car, my partner would take half the car. Let's say if you're searching a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I search my half and he searched his half or she searched her half, we'd switch.
That's right.
Because you gotta double check, triple check.
You do, man. People are crafty.
Yeah. So I'm shining my flashlight in the vehicle and I noticed something about the suitcases. There's no glass on the suitcases.
Yep.
As I'm shining my light, and what tipped me off is as I'm shining my light through there, the glass is reflecting at me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like dancing.
Mm-hmm.
The glass is like dancing inside the car. And as I look at the bags, I'm like, there's not one piece of glass on these bags.
Yeah.
And I'm talking there is glass everywhere.
Yeah.
Because we're talking 4 complete windows.
And I would also say there would have been voids in the seats.
Yeah.
Right. Where they were sitting, where the glass landed on them. Yeah.
Which there wasn't.
Right.
Now, I went up to the women and I was like, hey, do you guys have any, one of them has like some little small cuts on the hand or something like that. And I look at them and on the front of their clothes, no glass.
Yeah.
0. Now on the backs where they were seated,
yep,
there is glass.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, so here's the deal. And then I go through that whole scenario. I'm like, and this is where I change my tactic, and people might get a little angry at first about the way that this happens, but this is how I handled this situation. I told them, I said, look, here's the deal. I checked the vehicle. I was looking through everything, but there's one thing I noticed that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one piece, not one shard of glass on your luggage. And the lady's like, well, I mean, so I'm like, no, let me tell you what I think happened.
Mm-hmm.
What I think happened is that what your husband told me is true. He came out here, he busted the glass out of the car. And then after he busted the glass out of the car, because you two are both intoxicated, you decided that you could probably still leave.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got in the car, you threw your bags in there, you sat down in the glass, you started to drive. Your friend cut her hand on the glass that was already in the vehicle. You got glass going through your pants, into your legs, and all your stuff. And then you decided it was a bad idea. You parked the car and you got out.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, no. I'm like, hang on, I'm not done yet. Filing a false police report is a crime.
Yep.
If you are telling me that this happened and I'm going to take this man to jail and you're lying, you will go to jail. And I'm going to ask you here in a minute to fill out a field witness affidavit.
That's right.
And when you sign that field witness affidavit, you're swearing that everything in that affidavit is true and correct to the best of your knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So if you sign that field witness affidavit and you're lying, I'm going to take you to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have a choice. And I tell her, I reiterate, listen, at this point, nobody's in trouble.
That's right.
I'm not, if you are lying to me and it's right, and we fess up, like we come to terms right now,
mm-hmm.
I have no beef with you. Our discrepancies are done, and we will handle this going forward in a different way.
Right.
But if you lie to me, that changes everything.
Uh-huh.
We're good right now. Tell me the truth. So she tells me the truth, and guess what? It's the same thing the guy said.
Yep.
Everything was exactly the same, and I tell her, okay, listen, what I need you to do is I need you to call somebody to come pick you and your friend up.
Yeah.
And she's like, why? I'm like, you have to leave the house because you and your husband were in an argument, and I need to separate the parties.
Yeah.
And she's like, why isn't he going to jail? And I'm like, because I'm not taking him to jail. I am going to do a report,
mm-hmm.
but I'm not taking him to jail. You guys are in a position where you can get where I think that it would be better for y'all to leave. Your husband has to get up now in about 4 hours to go to work. And so I'm not going to ask him to leave. And I know that upset them greatly.
Sure.
But what happened is that I separated the parties. I filed my report, and there was no additional action taken.
Right.
And that was one of those scenarios where I think a lot of people could say, well, man, it could have gone a lot of different ways. Separating parties gets pretty nasty in some situations, because in most situations I do make the male leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's just that was always kind of my preference. I don't know if that was the same with you, but I'd always tell the male that they needed to find somewhere to go.
Well,
especially if there are kids around or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. And it was always who's the aggressor,
or the most aggressive in the situation,
or the drunkest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I'm not going to let a drunk person like jump in their ride and head off. I'm just saying you're trying to get the person who's more than likely to cause the issue again or cause another issue in some other way, i.e. being loud, turning their music up, firing off guns in the backyard, hooting and hollering at the moon, that type of thing. So, yeah, no, but more often than not, it is the male of the household that you ask to leave.
Yeah, and in this situation also, the two females were intoxicated, so if I had them picked up by a responsible party, then I know someone who is sober is now watching them.
Right, and it all worked out.
Yeah, and it all worked out. So
yeah, no, that's a really good example because, I mean, you had to kind of figure all that out and talk to a lot of people. They think that they got their story down. They think that it's good to go. They're like, well, he's going to learn his lesson. We're going to say that we're in here and he busted the windows out with a golf club. We're trying to leave. Never mind the fact that we're both hammered.
Yeah, and none of that worked out.
We're admitting to being behind the wheel of a motor vehicle.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's a good example because you collected all the information, you sat everybody down, and it worked out. That's good. And coming back to the handcuffing him, that's something that a lot of people complain about when they see it happen in person, especially if you're out in public.
Yeah.
Like if you're out at say you go down to like downtown.
Just videos of people screaming, he didn't even do nothing.
Oh my God, it is.
He didn't do nothing. And yeah.
You're like, hey man, come here. And let's say it's like just a public intox, but the guy's being a little, he's not trying to throw dukes on me, but he's pulling his arms away. He's like, whoa man, what are you trying to do?
Real
I'm
shifty.
Like, yeah, he's acting shifty. Well, listen, pal, I don't want to take you to jail either, but you're hammered and you're stumbling around the streets and you're shouldering into people. And when they say, hey, watch out, you try to get in their face and you're being aggressive. This is just for your safety.
Yeah.
And for the safety of everybody. I'm going to put these handcuffs on you so you don't try to take a swing on somebody, me included. And I'm going to have you sit down on the curb so that you can't try to run away. Because you would be surprised how many people get handcuffed and they're like, you know what, I'm going to split. Try. If you get the chance, put on handcuffs and try to take a dead sprint.
Yeah, yeah, behind your back.
You know what? You might be able to boot scoot for a little bit, but if you mess up, that's a lot of body mass hitting the ground.
If your, I guess, equilibrium shifts in the wrong way, slightly, one time.
Exactly.
It's over.
And so more often than not, and you're
going to lip skid.
Yeah. You're going to be putting some money into some dental work. The good lip skid. I've seen a bunch of them. Yeah, it happens pretty frequently. But and that's what you say. You're like, you're not under arrest. I'm just doing this for safety. You're acting shifty and you explain it to him.
Yeah.
It's not like you just walk up and you're like, hey, you right there. You slap handcuffs on him. You're like, sit down. Yeah. And they're like, why are you doing this? And you're like, shh.
Yeah,
no.
Verbalize everything.
Of course.
If you can, and I know that you don't owe an explanation to bystanders, but the best way to, in my opinion, get past some of this is to explain what you're doing as you're doing it.
Yeah.
Hey man, you're not under arrest right now. You are being detained in a situation like you're just talking about.
Absolutely.
You are being detained because I have reason to believe that you are intoxicated. You are in a public place, and I believe you're a danger to yourself or to others.
Mm-hmm.
You have all your probable cause. Everything's kind of just tied up right there. They know what the potential charges could be. Anybody that's within an earshot knows what the potential charges could be. And also, if you say, I'm putting these handcuffs on you, you are detained right now, but I'm doing this for mine and your safety, and if you explain it through. Now, I know some people they just pulled up and put the cuffs on him. We understand.
Of course.
We understand.
Yeah.
Every scenario is different, and everybody's got something that will go against everything I'm saying right now.
Yeah. If I, any type of fight or 10-10s, fights are a huge one. So, in this particular example, it was in the South Lawn neighborhood. It was like a Friday night or a Saturday night. I don't quite recall. It's warm out because it's the summer, and there's a bunch of people drinking. There's a big old, half a block party. There's cars everywhere. A bunch of people hanging out, having a good time at somebody's house that could fit all these people. Barbecue was going, all that stuff. And you roll up. Some guy got hammered. They had a disagreement. about their NASCAR or their football, whatever. I know it was the summer. I'm just going with the first examples I thought of. I don't recall what that actual issue was. But some guy was hammered and he wanted to fight. And so we roll up and they're like, everybody's like, who is it? And they're like, that guy. It's this sweaty dude with no shirt on.
Of course.
And I was like, this adds up pretty quickly. And I'm like, hey, man, come here. He's like, what? I didn't even do nothing. I'm like, man, you got like dirt and grass and like that sand and stuff that builds up along the curb because you've been rolling on the ground. It's all stuck all over you, man. I know you've been fighting out here. So here, I'm going to put handcuffs on you. I'm going to have you sit down. I'm going to try to figure this out. And he's like, am I under arrest? I'm like, no, man, you're not under arrest yet. I don't want to arrest anybody. Yeah. But I am here to investigate the crime. And it's obviously what's here because when I pulled up, 40 people pointed at you. Yeah. So I'm assuming you're involved. And that guy just couldn't get over the fact. He was like, people were like, what's happening? He's like, man, they're arresting me. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Yeah. You're not under arrest. You're just being detained because you have the textbook look of the drunk uncle who picked a fight on a Saturday night. Yeah. Your shirt's missing. You're covered in grass and dirt, man. Yeah. You're the guy that was fighting. Unless you were out here doing acrobatics. Yeah. He's out there practicing his flips in the front yard. Yeah, man. He's doing some flips. Maybe he's showing his kids how to ride a skateboard back in the day. Do a kick flip. Yeah. Ollie. And then he eats it. Yeah, exactly. No. And so, but that's another good example because everybody was like, whoa. And the people that were on his side, or maybe didn't even know what was going on at all, were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. Why are you putting cuffs on him? And I'm like, hold on, man. Just stay back. I'm like, I'm here because he was picking a fight with somebody. Man, I've been with him all night. I didn't see nothing. I'm like, well, I don't know that. All I know is this dude's all dirty and sweaty and his shirt's missing. Yeah. And that's not very reasonable or prudent. Yeah. And which are two huge words that you can use to kind of filter out a bunch of BS when it comes to law enforcement. Yeah, and a lot of times, one of the sad realities of law enforcement is once you've been in a little while, you just assume that most of the time everybody's lying to you, even in a situation where you don't have to lie about anything. Yeah, for some reason, true. People always skirt the truth in one way or the other, and I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism or they feel like if something's bad is going to happen to them, or they have an allegiance towards somebody that, camaraderie or whatever. And so when you first arrive on the scene, the first thing you do, number one, is you're looking out for the safety of yourself and the people around you, mm-hmm. Responding officers. You're trying to figure out what's going on. And if in a way diffusing the situation a little bit, if you can diffuse the situation a little bit by putting somebody in handcuffs, you're obviously going to do that. Sometimes people get angry about that certain situation, but you have to realize that like in your situation, yeah, the guy's got dirt all over him. He's like sweating. He's got no shirt on. He's, you can tell he's definitely amped up. And then the first thing someone says to you is that I've been with him all night and I didn't see anything. Yeah. So automatically you're going into this scenario where like, okay, this is what kind of night, this is what this is going to be. Exactly. And look, some people, a lot of cops out there go out, they show up, they're like, man, somebody called me out here, someone's going to jail. And if that's their mentality, okay, that's fine. That's not really how I did it. No. I didn't want to, of course I'm looking for bad guys, but I'm looking for real bad guys. Yeah. Somebody who gets a little tuned up and wants to throw dukes with his neighbor over their hedge line or whatever. Man, no one has to go to jail for that. Is it over? Yeah. Did y'all figured it out? Or mutual combat? Yeah. Where two dudes duked it out and they're like, you know what? We're good now. Yeah. That's a thing. Yeah. That does happen. And you're like, okay, cool. Because just because you had a couple too many beers and you wanted to fist fight your neighbor over the fact that he sprayed for weeds and he got part of your hedges, that's very unfortunate. Yeah. That's very unfortunate. I'm sure he's sorry. And dude, it's a plant. Because if you go to jail, then I'm also going to have to file a report. You're going to have to get bailed out if you so choose. And then you have all the additional issues that are going to come from a crime that was going to be investigated. And if you're found to be guilty, you're going to have to pay for that too. Mm-hmm. So I'm really trying to do you a favor. So if the least you could do is just put these handcuffs on, sit down and tell me what happened, and we can figure this out. Yeah. And, but it just doesn't work out that way. People, they see a cop show up, they're like, oh man, somebody's busted. Yeah. Somebody's going to jail. This guy's here to ruin everybody's day. And you know what? Sadly, there are plenty of cops out there that will do that. They're like, I'm out here, out of my car, investigating this crime. Someone's going to pay.
Yeah, someone's going to. I got to write a report. Someone's going to jail
Right,
too.
yeah. And if that works for them, great. But more often, most cops are just like, hey, man, we just want everybody to get along and have a good night.
Yeah.
No one wants to get their Friday or Saturday night ruined, or any day of the week ruined by going to jail.
Yeah. And I didn't. Is there people out there that cops in general that do stuff like that? Absolutely, of course. That things like that do happen. That's not the norm, though. It can happen, but that's not the norm.
No.
And like you said, I've several times, because of the college town kind of type deal, we'd go to a party where like two buddies just got into a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Go break the fight up, and is anybody injured? No. All right, it's kind of a mutual combat situation. Everybody they're sitting there cracking cold ones. They're like, oh man, you know what? It was just a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, see y'all later.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave. I'm not going to come in there and
You do leave the warning though.
yeah.
You're like, hey man, if it's good, it's good. Let it lie. Enjoy the rest of your night. But if we get
However,
if we
if
get
I have
called
to
out
come
here
back out
again,
here, yeah.
you're both going to jail, which I have said many times. If it's over, let it stay over. Because if we get called out here again for the same thing, y'all both going to jail.
Yeah, both of y'all are going to jail.
And if that makes me look silly in the report, like, why didn't you arrest him the first time, officer? Well,
I'll be able to explain that.
I'll be able to explain that. They're not going to like him. They might not like how I'm explaining it, but the facts are the facts, and that's just the way it is. And then I go back there, now I got them both for assault, PI, what's the other one?
Oh, a disorderly conduct.
Disorderly conduct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I know this, but my brain's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And disorderly conduct, that's a great catch-all.
Yeah.
Disorderly conduct, you're too loud. Your music's too loud.
Disorderly conduct, fighting.
That's it, and you got him. Boom. That's you're at least taking a ride to jail for a Class C.
Yeah.
Or a Class B, depending on what you've done.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember I had a guy one time that I pulled him. Well, his car was disabled on the side of the road,
Mm-hmm.
and I walked up to him and I'm like, "What happened?" He's like, "My car broke down and he's drunk." And I'm like, "Listen, I'm not going to go through a whole DWI situation here." Because I didn't even see him operating the vehicle.
Yeah.
Things can get kind of hazy, but I told him, I said, hey, call your ride and have somebody come pick you up. And he was like, okay. And he gets on the phone, calls somebody. They obviously can't take the vehicle, but I'm going to log it out where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
And, I told him get any belongings in there that he might want to take with him because somebody can break into his car while he's gone because the vehicle's disabled now. And I was like, hey, just for my own personal kind of knowledge, I was like, I want you to take a PBT and, just the portable breath test.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to take a PBT because I want to kind of see where you're at. And that was just for me. Like, I wanted to know, like, where this guy was in where I kind of wanted to match up what my thoughts were and kind of confirm it with, like, a PBT. And I was like, hey, I just want you to blow into this and I want to get you. He's like, you son of a... I'm like, what? And he's like, this is how y'all get us trapped. He's like,
classic.
He's like, you're trying to get me to blow into the PBT, so then I'm over the legal limit, and then you take me to jail. And I was like, dude, you already got a ride coming. Like, I already told you, like, this is all being recorded right now.
This isn't a joke.
Yeah, I'm like, I just wanted to know just where you were, like, what your level is, because you seem like you're pretty intoxicated.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that it's safe for you to leave here, and that the person that has you knows that, you're extremely intoxicated and all these things. I'm just trying to, and he's like, you're trying to trap me. He's like, I won't do it. He's like, I refuse. And I was like,
okay,
that's fine.
Yeah.
You can refuse. And he's like, no, you know what? I refuse. You can take me to jail. And I was like, no.
Then he just 180'd on you so hard. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, go ahead, take me to jail for DWI. I'll beat it. He's like, you ain't got nothing on me. And I was like, look, that's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
You can refuse the PBT. You just did. Now that's over.
Yep.
Your ride's coming, and, I'll see you later. As soon as I get here, see you later.
Exactly.
And he's like, take me to jail then. And we go back. He and I are arguing with my sergeant out there, because my sergeant shows up now.
Yeah.
Because I've been out there for a little while. And he shows up, and now me and my sergeant and this guy are all arguing about how we're not taking him to jail, but he wants to go to jail now.
Does, yeah.
And I'm like, golly.
Dude, people can be so funny about that. You're just like, please, sir, we are all on your side here. You already called a ride, man. It's not like I'm going to get here. He's going to show up. I'm going to be like, boom, got you. Throw him in handcuffs.
Got you, and I got you, and I got you.
Yeah. Are you his friend? Yeah, take a look at this. Got him. Roasted. Remind him about this when he bails out next week.
Take a picture of this.
Yeah, exactly. It's so silly. But I mean, drunk people and how they reason, there ain't no telling where that's going to go.
No.
But let's move on to something else, like another big one that I wanted to talk about. You know, a lot of times in true crime, there is a lot of like domestic violence.
Yes.
And I don't want to dive super deep into it, but I do want to talk about something that comes up a lot in a lot of the podcasts I listen to, where, you know, somebody, there's an abuser in the home of any level, and, you know, the spouse or the significant other calls the police and nothing ends up happening.
Yeah.
And domestic violence is not funny. It's terrible. And there are a lot of
very complex too.
It is, yeah. And there's a lot of legality in Texas that tries to keep that from happening or to be continued happening. I didn't say that right, but I'm going to let it ride. But what I want to talk about is there are things that are in place that can help keep it from happening. But what's really important is that people have to, you have to communicate the issue. You have to report it. If there was a better way to do it, we would do it that way. But if you're the victim and you call the police and the police show up and the aggressor is intoxicated and was slapping his family around and he goes to jail, and then when the detective calls to follow up, you don't want to press charges, that case is over.
Yeah.
It's over. And it's not any law enforcement agency's fault. It's not the state or the county where it occurred's fault. There's only so much you can do with the information given. Did the guy go to jail for the night? Sure. And then you feel, maybe the person who called feels regretful. I'm sure they do. That's tough. Nobody wants to call the police and send someone they love or care about to jail. But abuse is a cycle. And it doesn't end until you remove one of the cogs from that cycle.
Yeah.
It won't. It can come back. There are rare little gem stories out there where something happens and a new leaf is turned over and it's all fixed. But more often than not, you have to call, you have to make the case, you have to follow up, you may have to testify, and that's just part of the civil process that we do, that you have to do to make sure that person gets the time they deserve in jail or probation or whatever happens. And you have to do that in order to also get the significant resources available to help you after the incident.
Yeah.
Like with finding a place to stay, even if you have kids or if you don't. You know, helping you get out on your own in case you're not the breadwinner in the household and that's something that the abuser holds over you. And I think you have a really great example of that, don't you?
Yeah. I actually wrote down, there was a case that I went to that I got called out to a house, a trailer park, actually. I got called out to a trailer to investigate a domestic violence situation. A lady called in and said that her husband had beat her up and slapped the kids around and, you know, things like that. And so we went out there and we were very familiar with this family because things like this had happened before. And we were always kind of looking for the chance to lock this dirtbag up that keeps on terrorizing this family. But every single time something always happens and it slips through the cracks, just like you're talking about. But we get called out there the day before. This guy was an over-the-road trucker. And the day before, the wife had taken the two kids because they were a low-income family. And at the sheriff's office that I worked at, we had a deal called Shop with a Cop around Christmas time. And so low-income families could sign up for this. They could come and meet with a police officer from either Canyon or, you know, sheriff's deputy from Randall or jailers or anything like that, any personnel at the office that wanted to participate. And the kids would get, I think, $25 or $50. It's been a while since I did that, so I can't remember. It's $25 or $50 gift card. And we would walk around with the family and we'd pick out presents with the kid. And, you know, it was a really cool thing. And the thing that always kind of tugged on my heartstrings is that it was crazy to me to see how many of these kids who are from low income families buy gifts for other people, for not even themselves. You know, they're using that money that they got to get other people things. And it was, you know, it was a cool experience, but these kids got to go, and one of the toys that the boy got, the child that was the boy, was a cop car, like just a plastic cop car that you can kind of drive around, not remote control or anything like that. But he had that as one of his gifts. And so the dad comes home from, you know, being on the road, and he gets hammered, and he sees the cop car, and he's like, "Hey, what is that?" And then the mom is like, "Well, I took the kids to shop with the cop yesterday, and that's one of the gifts that he got." And so the dad hates the police, and so he picks the cop car up and he just smashes it, spikes it on the ground, smashes it. So the kid's upset, and when the kid starts crying and he gets angry, the dad gets angry, and so he starts slapping the kid around.
Mm-hmm.
The mom comes in and tries to defend the kid. She gets beat up. And then for some odd reason, he went back to where their daughter was at and just slapped her around, just went back to her bedroom, slapped her around for no reason, and then got in his truck and left.
An animal.
Yeah, so when I got there, it was the three victims,
Mm-hmm.
the mother, the son, the daughter. We got the statement from the mom, and I got pictures of the smashed car, about, you know, all the stuff. I can kind of tie it all up, and I put it out on the radio that the guy left. This is the truck that he's in. His wife believes she knows where he was probably headed. One of our deputies goes over and checks, finds his truck, finds the dude. Hank, you know, cuffs him, calls me. He's like, "Hey, I found the guy." And I'm like, "Take him to jail."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "This dude," I was
Yeah.
like, "assault family violence times 3. And he's like, "Okay." And so he takes him up to the jail and books him in. We process all the evidence, get everything through. And then right after that, the guy bonds out of jail the next day.
Mm-hmm.
He bonds out of jail, and I check into the case, and I realize, like, not long after this, he's back at the house.
Mm-hmm.
There's no restraining order, and everything is just going on like nothing. And I'm like, what is it? So I want to look into this, because I truly fear for the woman and her kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked one of the detectives, and he's like, "Man, there's nothing we can do." He's like, the very next day, the wife recanted her statement.
Mm-hmm.
And said that she no longer wanted to cooperate. We can't talk to the kids.
That's right.
Because they were young. They were young children. And our whole case is now busted. And I was like, yeah, but even without her cooperation, I've got photos of all the injuries.
Yep.
I've got stories to back it up. I know that she won't testify against him, but I have her affidavit that she signed off of, saying all of these things happened. And he's like, it's not, she refused everything. And I found out later the reason why is because she stayed at home with the kids.
Yep.
They were already poor. They had no money. He was an over the road trucker, but apparently he wasn't doing, I don't know what they spent their money on, because I hear that's fairly good money.
Yeah.
And probably booze and cocaine and something.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Stuff for him.
Yeah, stuff for him. And while he's gone, and his family lives in poverty, and he's gone all the time. But if you remove him from the scenario, they already have next to nothing.
Yeah.
If you remove him from the scenario, they have nothing.
Right.
They have no money. They have no way of getting money. It's over. And
Right.
so she's put in this scenario where she has to choose between having food for her and her kids or getting beat. And I think that is a terrible scenario and situation to be in. But that's one of the things when people are like, why can't, there's nothing you can do. You can't do something about that. And unfortunately, because we're talking about slapping people around, throwing a couple of punches, it's nothing severe enough for, in this case, without any cooperation, for the DA's office to be able to take it to trial.
Right.
Now, and this is one of those situations where someone's like, well, it's going to take her getting stabbed or killed, or he's going to kill some. Yeah, unfortunately, if in this scenario, if
Right.
that was the next step, then that would have been, and people are like, well, there has to be something you can do.
You know what? And even I say that.
Yeah.
And I was a cop, and I dealt with that stuff on the weekly. And I totally agree, but it's not at the agency level.
Right.
The system is just badly built.
Yeah.
You still have to follow all the laws and procedures that are in place all the way up to the state level.
I was going to say, that's definitely a state level.
Right. Yeah. And they're just, sadly, it's just very difficult. Now, this is in no way victim blaming.
No.
That mother is doing what she thinks is best, and that's all you can ask for anybody to do.
Yep.
And unfortunately, she's just trapped in that cycle.
Yep.
She did. She called she's like, I had enough. I'm calling the cops. He's going to jail. So right there, you can look at it like this. Those cops, you and them other cops, you did your job. The guy went to jail, but the cycle, that doesn't break the cycle. He's going to get out.
Yeah.
He's going to come back. She recanted. So what that means is she's saying, yeah, I said all that, but I'm taking it back.
Yeah.
So now, even if they wanted to move the case forward and she's not going to cooperate, they have no way to corroborate that. They have a single document.
Yep.
A single affidavit or statement where she's saying that, and she's recanted it. So now that statement is now void.
Yeah. So his attorney could say,
Right.
is this now still a true document?
No.
No, it's not.
Yep. She recanted.
Yeah. So now, just like you said, so now who are your victims?
Right. There are none.
There are none.
Yeah. And it's disgusting, and it's really, really depressing, but that's just how it goes. I had a similar case, definitely not that bad, but still bad. I get called out to an affluent neighborhood here in Amarillo, and for a lady who got whooped by her husband for whatever reason. They're both intoxicated. When I go in the house, big old house, she's sitting in the kitchen and she's got a cold compress on her forehead.
Mm-hmm.
And she pulls back and I go in with my camera because she's like, the suspect is not here. So I'm okay, I'm making a report. I'm going to get pictures. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell you that. They'll train you that. You go in there with your camera. Don't even ask.
Start taking
pictures. If they ask you to stop, you might want to stop.
Yeah.
But whatever you got already, that's good to go. And I'm only looking for injuries on this person, the victim. I need to get pictures because domestic family violence is something I take very seriously. And everybody should.
And pictures are good evidence.
That's
because
right.
If this goes to trial, or even if you say, well, I'll catch up with you the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could have a scenario where, and we would tell people this, if your injuries get worse, call us back because we want to document that too.
Yeah, get the additional bruising, scabs, stuff like that. Yeah.
But there is also a chance, based on what these injuries are, that the next day they could
fade.
They could
Absolutely.
be less.
So I walk in. She starts telling me what's happened. Her and her husband were drinking and having a normal night. They drank all the time. She would say, in not so certain terms, that they're both alcoholics. They drink very heavily. She got mad about something that she found, like a dirty washcloth. I know this sounds silly, but it was put in the wrong bin. She got mad and yelled at him, and he punched her in the face.
Golly.
That's it. That was literally it. That's where it began and ended. And so I asked to see the injury. She removed the cloth, and her eyebrow was peeled back about a half inch from the left to the right.
Golly.
Yeah. So he punched her and caught her right in, and she's a little older.
Yeah.
So her skin's a little more, frail.
Yep.
And it peeled it right back. It's just, all you can see is meat under there. And I was like, oh man. So I snapped a couple pictures. And she's like, why are you taking pictures? And I'm like, well, I need to document the injury. And she's like, oh, no. I'm not doing that. And I'm like, hold up. Before you say that, that is your choice. But ma'am, I have to document it. Like, this is very serious. He punched you in the face and split your eyebrow open. You're like, might even require stitches. And she's like, no, I'm not doing anything like that. And she, because of that, of me asking about the injuries and wanting to take a closer look, she completely 180 on me.
Yeah.
Luckily, this joker showed back up. He literally went down the street to get another bottle of booze from a friend's house.
Nice.
So he pulls up. I see the lights kind of reflect off the storm door, and I'm like, oh, I walk out there, and he's just bebopping up the drive. In my car, he's parked right next to my car. My marked patrol unit.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, what's going on? And I'm like, you're just the guy I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I throw him in handcuffs and put him in my car. I'm like, you're under arrest. You for assault, family violence. You punched her in the head. You split her eyebrow open. And of course, he's all kinds of like cocky and belligerent. And he's like, no, it was mutual. And I'm like, no, man, you don't have a mark on you.
Yeah.
But you're going to jail. Like, that's what I do know. You're going to Randall County tonight. And I go back in, and now she is completely stonewalling me. She's not going to fill out any affidavit or statement. She's not going to let me take any more pictures. She doesn't want to talk to me anymore. So anything I got on my body mic has, anything like that has now ended. I'm not able to get anything from her. And she refuses to cooperate. So I'm like, man, well, I know I got the guy. He showed back up. I could see the damage. He's going to jail. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm still taking him to jail. I'm still going to file this report, and hopefully something will come out of this. And hopefully you realize this isn't something you have to take the whole spiel.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody to keep being abused. So then I take him out to the car, and he is just talking a mile a minute. I turn my camera around to look at him, because he's just back there talking. And he even goes on to say, I don't recall verbatim, but he even asks, do you know how long it took he was 50 something and she was 48.
Yeah.
He goes, you know how long it took a 50 something year old male to beat up a 48-year-old woman? It took me about 5 seconds. He said that. I caught that on audio.
Yeah.
But here's the real kicker to the story. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
That case got file 13.
Yeah. They took that thing and just threw it right out.
They did. And I was like, but I mean, I got pictures. You could see it. I got the pictures of her eyebrow and all of the details of what happened before she started stonewalling me. They're all there. And that detective was like, she didn't want to cooperate. It's over.
Yeah.
It also doesn't hurt that the person that I took to jail for this offense, who I won't say his name or where he's employed, but he knows a lot of people and he knows a lot of judges. And so he even admits it and even cracks a joke about how little time it took him to do it.
Yeah.
And
nothing happened.
Nothing. Zero.
Yeah.
He bonded out the next day and it was gone like it never happened.
Yeah.
And that is my story of how she didn't work.
And that's the crazy thing, is that in situations like this, there is an arrest. So it does come up as an arrest, but once these things fall apart, there's no indictment.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no warrant issued for the arrest.
Yep.
It literally just ends.
Yeah, the paper trail ends
right there
when he leaves Randall County.
Yeah, when he left the jail,
yep,
it was over.
It was over. And that's exactly what happened. There was no follow-up ever. It was done. And file 13, for those that don't know, that means the trash.
Yeah. And so if you look at that later on, it's going to come back. I believe if you looked at a criminal history, it would show that the case was dismissed.
That's right.
And so if you're the aggressor in this situation, you'd be like, oh, I got arrested and it was a bunch of BS, or I dismissed.
Yep.
They didn't have enough evidence to do anything because
right.
I got wrongfully arrested. And there's a lot of times things like that happen. And I think a lot of people can be like, because the picture part of it, like when you're talking about that, I wanted to bring up that. Remember, I told you, I think I've told everybody about that fight I got in at Hobby Lobby.
Yeah.
Where our buddy showed up and helped me out. It was on duty. And
got him.
The first thing that happened after we got back in and we got everything in handcuffs is that he photographed all my injuries.
That's right.
That goes for us too. Like even the police officers or whoever. You get photographed. Like I walked in there and he's like, "Hey man, hey Crowley, stand up against the wall. Let me give you these pictures." And I had to do my hands and my knees and all everything.
Tattered clothes.
But yeah, everything was photographed.
Man. Yeah, and especially if you are the law enforcement officer and you get roughed up in any way, even if it's self-inflicted, i.e., you go to jump a fence and your gear catches on the picket and you fall down. Don't want to get bleeped. Yeah. And you fall down and eat it and you get hurt. That does happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
They're going to want to photograph it because it happened.
Or if
in the line of duty.
Yeah. Or like if you challenge your buddy to a foot race and then as you're running down the street, you fall down.
That doesn't happen. Oh my gosh. But yeah, especially if you're tangling with a suspect or anytime you're hurt pretty much. But if it's related to a case you're working on, those pictures of you, and they're not very flattering either.
No.
I got headbutted by a crackhead one time fighting with him in the back of my car because he started having his little meth freak out.
Yeah.
Like when he was just
just so slippery back there too because they sweat so much.
Yeah. And why is it?
Stinks.
It's like a slime.
Yeah.
It's not even like a fluid.
Yeah.
It gets slimy. It's really gross for those that don't know.
Yeah.
This guy was very, very deep into a meth-induced high. And once he realized that he was going to jail and that it wasn't a joke, what he did was a crime and he could not do that. He started to thrash in the backseat, try to kick out my windows, headbutt the cage, all the things they try to do to, I'm not sure, act tough, cause damage.
Yeah.
So I went to restrain.
Definitely not in the right mind, so who knows?
Right. Definitely not. This guy's pupils were like the size of dimes.
Yeah.
And so I had to restrain him, seatbelt him, hobble his legs, and put him in a Red Man helmet for his own safety so he can't kick the glass out of my windows and headbutt himself, splitting his nugget open or knocking himself out. Although...
Or you.
Or me.
Yeah.
But wait, that did happen. Before I got the Red Man helmet, he leaned back, looked at me right in the eyes, and swung his head forward and caught me right in the kisser. Basically forced me to kiss him in the forehead.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
It popped me good. And so I had to take these very unflattering pictures of me folding my lips open so they could see how purple it was. And you could see a perfect dental imprint of my own teeth where he flattened my lip so hard to my teeth. You could see perfectly my teeth in my lip.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. But it's embarrassing because now forever at the department that I worked at, those pictures of me making this stupid face holding my lips open like butterfly wings. It looks so dumb.
And let me tell you something. There ain't nothing worse than getting razzed by your buddies because they're going to take every shot. Like, you're going to walk into the office where you do your reports at, and that picture is going to be on the screen of all the computers in there. And you're like,
it's going to be printed out in your box just every day for a month.
Yeah, you're like, come on, man. Yeah, the best razzing goes on in the muster room is where ours was
the
at.
report room.
Report room, yeah.
Yeah, report and muster room, they're going to get you. But my point is that even though, if you're ever thinking like, man, these cops want to know way too much about me, don't worry. Every single thing a cop does they have to know everything about you. Yeah.
And it's also nothing personal.
Absolutely nothing personal.
After I do the report, it's unlikely that, after a certain amount of time goes by, I'm not even going to remember what your name is.
No.
Because I'm going to run into another person the next day, probably doing the same thing. And I've filled out so many information packets that I couldn't even keep track of what was in. When I say information packet, that's what we would do is if you filled out a fill witness affidavit, I would still fill out an information sheet on you that I'd put on the top of the report that had all of your information on it so they can just type it straight into the system. I could not tell you how many of those that I've done. And once I get one, it's not in my head anymore. It's nothing personal. And it's not going to be like one of those things where you're going to be like, well, I'm going to make this report against the guy and then he's going to find out where I live and he's going to come kill me. That's probably not going to.
This isn't like a 90s mob movie.
Yeah. And
he's got to go.
Yeah, exactly. He knows too much.
He knows too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So this, I didn't realize just talking about a couple of different things, because we try not to run these episodes too long, but you can really chew up a lot of time just staying on, one specific topic, because one of the other things I wanted to talk about, and we don't have to spend as much time on it, is the difference in when people call in, like we talked about in the Kara Knott case, is the difference between like a missing persons, a runaway, and then
always a good topic.
Yeah, and we can go, like, I know a lot of people say in situations where you have a missing person that it is the most important thing to you as the person who's calling it in. And you can feel like it's not important to the police because they may say that they can't do anything about it, but there's also restrictions in what we can do. And what I mean by that, and so that we don't get into another 45-minute roll, is that we can only do what we can with the information that we have. So
that's it.
Going back and talking about giving the police as much information as you can, that really helps out a lot as far as where can we go from here. So if you're saying there's a missing person, or I haven't talked to my cousin in, 2 days, nobody's seen him, we don't know where he is. And so we have to get as much information as we can from you. If your information is limited, that's what our reaction is. Our reaction can only be limited because we can't start searching a city of 200,000 people for your cousin.
No, there's just not
with
enough.
No information.
Right.
You can't redirect resources on a nothing. Like if you called your sergeant and you say like, hey, rally the guys, we got to search for this guy. His cousin thinks that he's in severe danger. Okay, does he have an idea about where he might be at? No. Do you know who he's hanging out with? Nope. Do you know what car he drives? No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where does he live? I don't know.
Yeah, I've been in several situations, especially with like runaways, where I'm talking to the parents and you get into the same scenario where you're saying like, okay, who does she hang out with or who does he hang out with? And in one particular scenario, I was talking to a father who said, I was like, is there a chance that she ran away with that she snuck out of the house to be with a boy?
To be the boy, yeah.
And he's like, absolutely not. There's no chance that she would do that. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened. But getting to the point where I could actually dive in and figure out what was going on, I had to waste literally an hour of my time. And luckily for this situation, we weren't like super busy, because I can tell you, if you're out on a runaway call and 2 hours go by, your sergeant's going to be like, he's going to call you.
Oh,
he's going to be like, what's happening?
He might even show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to look for this child somewhere?
Exactly.
I don't hear for you calling for anybody, or no one's sending out, or no one's there. What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because those resources, the police officers, are tied up on certain things, and crime is continuously happening around the place that you live at. Calls keep coming in. So if you're stuck on a call for a long time and the other guys or girls are out there just having to slant, they're a slave to the radio, just hitting call after call after call after call, because you're sitting around not doing much, it's not going to look good on you.
Yeah, they need to get you back in the rotation.
Yeah, you need to jump back in the rotate. You need to get your report done, get as much information you can. Basically, this guy, I have to walk around in circles for an hour with this guy, because he's refusing to even entertain a reality that he doesn't think could happen.
Right.
The fact that his daughter might be out with somebody, the fact that I'm like, well, where's her cell phone at? And he's like, I don't know. She has it with her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, can we log on to like her computer? Does she have a laptop? Because my thing is, I'm getting on her social media.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at any instant messenger deals that she might have on her.
I'm going to find my iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start going through all these avenues to see if I can find and he's like, no, she wouldn't have. And then I end up finding her phone on her bed.
Yeah.
And then in her phone are messages to this guy stating where they were going to meet at.
Yeah.
And she left her phone there so that nobody could find her.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I sent a deputy over to the location to where they were at. And when he got there, there wasn't anybody there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, well, maybe they left. So I got on her phone and I called him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, man, this is Deputy Crowley with the Randall County Sheriff's Office. And, I need you to bring so-and-so home. He's like, oh, man, I don't know what you're talking about. And as he's trying to like creep in and drop her off, boom, we got him. And then the worst part about that, though, is it turns out he was like 28 years old and she was 14.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. And so,
someone needs to get whooped.
Yeah. So, I guess see, we're rolling into it again. So when I get him, I'm like, hey, hold that guy. And they identify. When I hear his date of birth, I'm like, what the what?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a grown man.
Yeah.
And so I tell the guy, I'm like, your daughter's like a 28-year-old dude. And he's like, what? And so they get back to the house. I start asking her questions and she's like, no, and we didn't do anything. I'm like, your messages are full of stuff of like you saying that you guys have sexual contact with each other.
Innuendos here.
And she's like, I don't want him to get in trouble. And I'm like, well, that's pretty much all I need for now. I go talk to him and I'm like, hey, buddy. So I talked to your girlfriend. She says that you guys are sexually active with one another. And he's like, well, I mean, we sort of are, but like we do things. And he starts going through. So long story short,
yucky.
I went ahead and I didn't get to arrest him. Based off of the information that I had without going through this whole deal, the detective was like, write the report up, get all his information, and cut him loose. And then we're going to see if the DA's office will take it.
Right.
They sent it to the DA's office. They took it.
That's right.
And he was arrested for sexual assault of a child.
So that's very important. He did not get arrested, but he did get justice. He did get justice done to him.
Yeah. Yeah. So that arrest did not happen it was not an on-view arrest is what we would call it.
Right. Yeah.
So he was not arrested on the scene. They later issued a warrant for his arrest. I'm sure maybe it went to like a grand jury or something if that was the scenario. And then they issued a warrant for his arrest and he went to jail. But that was the thing with this missing persons and runaways is that we can only operate off the information that you give us. And if it is not your fault that you don't have a whole lot of information, please return that grace back to us whenever we tell you that really we have to kind of wait until we get more.
That's right. Yeah, and so I guess we're getting ready to wrap up here in a minute. But what I really want to say is it's okay to not know the answer to certain questions, but what we're saying is you need to know as much as you can so that anybody can help you. Now, we're talking about it specifically from a law enforcement standpoint, but the same exact information would be relevant if you asked your neighbor or your best friend to help you as well.
Yeah.
If somebody's missing and you don't know where to start looking or where they're at or anybody they're hanging out with, if you told that information to anyone, they also would not know where to start.
Yeah. They would ask you to help. They're like,
know where your family and friends hang out. Know especially where your kids hang out and who they're hanging out with. It's the age of smartphones. I'm sure you could put it on your notepad, and guess what? It stays there. I know for a fact if I open up my phone, I type LOL into my notepad, close my phone. Next time I open my notepad, it's still there.
Yeah.
Get as much information as you can about people that are important to you if things are acting shady, or especially if they start running away, so that you have this information going forward because you need it.
Yeah.
People are going to need these things. You can't do much if you don't know much.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't start a search party from nothing.
Yeah. But I do want to say real quick, and when we get to the next Two Not Cops episode, something a very big topic, especially in the last 10, 15 years I want to talk about is use of force. Because I had a insane question asked to me where somebody said, how come the military has such a high, regard for policy when it comes to escalation of force, but cops don't have any? And I was like, that question is fundamentally incorrect.
Yeah.
But I want
use of force continuum.
Right. Yeah. That's something I really want to talk about. People often ask, how can a cop do this to somebody and they also not get in trouble? So that's something I definitely want to talk about. It's going to be real juicy because that is a huge topic, but
and maybe we can throw it, because one of the things I wanted to add into this one, but we're not going to have enough time, is like interview and interrogation.
Oh yeah,
and like how that can, if you're
we didn't get to that, but that is a huge one. Yeah. That is that could be an episode all by itself when we talk about how you break down a suspect, how you get the information you're looking for, and all the little things going into that. Because luckily that was one of the classes I was able to take. I did go to an interview and an interrogation school at my department. It was very cool, and I learned a ton of stuff. And then
also, if you're on the other side of that,
that's right.
Things that you can do if you feel like, one of the things that I wrote down to talk about was if you get, say the detective that's a hammer and everything's a nail, and you just feel like you're like, and I didn't do anything, but they're really trying to make it like I'm the person no matter what. And so, interview and interrogation, and definitely use of force. Those are two good ones.
That's a huge one to talk about. It's a very hot button issue, and people have a lot of questions. And I may not be able to answer all of them, but I'm sure as heck going to try with what I know about the Texas law enforcement's use of force.
So let's say this, since now that we know that, so let's say next Two Not Cops episode, we do use of force. Yeah. And anybody that has any questions, send them to us.
Yeah, please.
So that we can actually answer the questions that you had. Because a lot of times we're referring off of questions that people asked us, over the last 10 or 12 years. Yeah. And sometimes it's not up to date or current, or, we're watching the news and things that go on, things that are going on around us right now. But if you have a specific question, you can let us know and we'll answer it.
Yeah, please do.
Right here.
And it doesn't matter what state you're in, what country you're in. I will do my best to answer it with the knowledge that I have. And if I need a little help, I got a Google machine and plenty of resources, i.e. lots of my buddies that are still active law enforcement.
Yeah.
And this is just something that we want to share. People have questions and we got answers. And you're not the only people that got questions. I got plenty of my own. There's a bunch of stuff out there, sound bites, little videos. And you're like, whoa, man, this cop just clobbered this dude. What'd that guy even do? Well, let's try to figure it out. Why can a cop clobber somebody? Why can a cop tase somebody?
I have a few specific cases where you can look at it from a law enforcement perspective where it was a good use of force and bad use. I mean, we got both examples for both.
Yeah, we do.
Most definitely. So if anybody has any questions about that, let us know, and I'll give you all the details about how you can get a hold of us here shortly.
Yeah, please do. We'd like to see if they work.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. All right, well, I guess that's where we are going to leave it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. Our numbers are going up, our downloads are going up, and we have you guys to thank for that. If you want to get a hold of us on any of the social medias, you can contact us on Facebook. We're at The Murder Project. If you need to type it in, we're at facebook.com/podcasttmp. If you're looking for us on Instagram, we're at The Murder Project. And you can find us on the old Twitter box at The Murder Pod. Also, don't forget, we do have that email. If you want to reach out to us there, it is contact@themurderproject.com. And as always, Mike or myself will get back to you. Also, don't forget, go into whatever platform you're listening on, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and hit that 5 stars.
Hit the 5 stars. Let's see them.
Yeah, we need some people to go. If you're listening on an Apple iPhone right now, please, go hit that 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
Leave us a review if you want to. Let us know how we're doing. We would appreciate it so much.
Very much.
That's going to do it for us on this episode. We thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. We look forward to talking to you guys again. But before we go, everybody, please remember,
head up, eyes up,
stay alive.